This evening we're making potato soup, and it's kind of like the Olive Garden Zuppa Toscana, but it's my version. I've looked up like other recipes to make it, but there's some stuff that I don't always have, or I want to change it up. So this is my version of the Zuppa Toscana, or kind of a potato soup with kale and sausage and bacon. And so I have the kale, and I've washed it already, and typically you want to wash kale because it can still have a little bit of dirt or grittiness to it. And then after you wash it, it's going to be pretty damp, so you can like kind of dry it in a clean dish towel. And then what I usually do is I'll stack them up, the leaves up. I'm going to use quite a few leaves here because they cook down pretty quickly, and so you want to have quite a few leaves. And my kids like more kale than less. And so what I typically do is, because kale is pretty thick, I can take off. And I've seen videos where people like put this in something to get it off, but it slides off so quickly. I don't know, like you don't have to make dirty dishes. It's so easy to get off. And you can, like with this, it kind of, a piece stayed, which is good because that's other nutrients. And you can even keep these to make like, to put in another dish, or to even cut up and put in the potato soup if you want. But there's a lot of nutrients in the stems as well. And so I'm going to stack these up. And I can kind of open them up. I'll try that. Stack them up as much as possible. And then, so I'm going to cut up several at one time. That's pretty. And so I'll cut like 4 strips. And then I will cut in thin slices. I think always in thin slices in the 4 strips, you're getting pretty small pieces, and that's easier to manage in a soup. Sometimes if you get a big chunk, I mean, it's okay, but smaller pieces are easier to manage in a soup because you're eating with a spoon, and so you want it to be kind of small pieces. Okay, and so I'm going to cut up the kale, and I've already cut up some potatoes and started cooking or heating up the potatoes, because the potatoes take a while to cook. So you want to start those first. And it's just potatoes right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of the sun cocoa oil. Just a little bit of that. And then I'm also going to add some butter. I didn't open the butter earlier. And this will give it just a little bit of flavor. Butter always makes things better.
Bro, you make a cookbook?
And so I'm just going to use a small amount of butter. I'm actually going to add some sausage. So a couple of pats of butter. I'm actually going to add some sausage and bacon later, so that'll also put a little bit of oil or grease in there. So you do need to be careful about that. Also, I'm going to add some crushed garlic, or minced garlic, sorry. I would try to use like fresh garlic, but I buy this minced garlic in case I run out of the fresh garlic and I haven't bought more. And so it's always good to have this on hand. So right now I'm out of fresh garlic, and so I'm going to put some of this in here as well. Then I can start adding the kale. I haven't cut up all of the kale, but I'll kind of cut that up and add that slowly as that cooks. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cooking the sausage. And before I start, I'm going to kind of just cook a little bit. This is a pound of sausage, so I'm going to cook maybe about 1/3 of a pound of the sausage. And I like the sausage a little bit spicy, so I'm going to add some crushed red pepper. But because we are making a kind of Italian type soup, I'm gonna put some garlic powder in this. I think the garlic powder helps mix in really nicely with the meat. Kind of gets in there and kind of gets in everywhere. I also put some pieces of minced garlic in there as well. And then I'm going to add, where is it? Some Italian seasoning. And this is kind of to make the sausage taste a little bit more, have a greater depth, variety of flavors, but also a little bit more in theme with the Italian style potato soup that I'm making. And so I'm going to start mincing that up, cutting that up. I forgot to fork. So I'm going to kind of piece that up in there, kind of mix that in real good, and let this cook for a little bit. And so as this cooks up, I'm going to get all of that crushed red pepper and garlic in there. And let that Italian seasoning kind of let it flavor the meat a little bit.
Go.
Alright, so what I'm doing now is I cooked up the sausage, and I let some of it get pretty, like a golden sear on it, a little crust. And so I think that'll be good because it'll add a little bit more texture to the soup. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this out with a fork. There's a lot of grease from the sausage, and I don't want that all ending up in the soup. So I'm going to take some of that out. Take it out with a fork instead of just pouring it into a bowl with all that grease. Make sure that that's left in there. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, as this sausage is out of the pan, I'm going to leave that seasoned grease in there, and I'm going to cook some bacon. Now this bacon that I got, it's pretty fatty, and so I'm going to try to not get all that fat into this. I'm just going to cut the bacon up into the pan and let that start cooking in the I'm going to turn the grease down. It's pretty hot right now. And kind of let that start cooking. And sometimes if you're cutting it if you cut it up like this, you can cut it up a little bit faster than if you were chopping it with a knife. So that's a little bit, it's nice to use scissors every once in a while in the kitchen. Got as much of the bacon as I can. That's mostly fat, so I'm not going to put that in there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of mix the bacon up and let that cook. Some of those chunks kind of separate. And so as that cooks, I'm going to go ahead and put the fork right in this because it's going to transfer some of that yummy bacon grease into the pan. And kind of stir this up a little bit. I'm also going to add some salvadoreña sour cream to the potato soup. Now, I don't think Olive Garden does this, or even other people that make the Zuppa toscana, but I like this kind of cream. It's a little bit spicy, and has a nice, good kind of queso type flavor actually. And so I'm going to mix that up in there. And so far, all I have in here is a little bit of garlic and a little bit of butter. So I'm going to mix up this saladaina to give it some of the flavors. So I kind of call it Mexican sour cream. This Mexican sour cream here. And mix it up pretty evenly. I'm going to come back over here and kind of cook some of this, stir up that bacon a little bit. I had it on a high heat from when I was cooking the sausage, but the bacon was cooking pretty quickly, so I turned it down to medium heat, and then I kind of just turned it off because the pan's going to, the burner is still hot and it's going to cook for a little bit. So as this is cooking, I'm going to continue to season the potato soup. I'm going to add some oregano leaves, and this is already chopped oregano leaves, so this is a really nice product. I'm going to add some crushed red pepper to the soup. Gives it a little spice that's nice to kind of have in there. I'm going to add some onion powder, but I'm also going to add some chopped green onion in a little bit as well. I always think the powders kind of help the flavors kind of mix a little bit evenly, and so I always kind of add those. I'm going to add some cracked black pepper as well. And even though there is bacon and sausage in this, which both of those pork products already have quite a bit of salt, I'm going to add a little bit of iodized salt. Iodized salt is always really good. The iodine is good for brain development, brain functioning. But sometimes in soups, I like to have some of the crunch of the Himalayan salt. And so I'm going to add that. I don't always use Himalayan salt because Himalayan salt, or this pink salt, doesn't always have iodine in it. And you want the iodine. A lot of people will just give up iodized salt and just use the Himalayan salt. But you need that iodine in your diet, especially if you're pregnant. If you're pregnant, make sure you're getting some iodine in your diet for your infant's neurological health. So I'm going to add both of those salts a little bit. And then I'm going to take this bacon off. And there's a lot of grease in this bacon. I have to keep it kale on this. And so there's a lot of grease in the bacon. So I don't want to transfer that to the soup. So I'm just going to take the bacon out as well. Kind of mix it with the sausage and let it sit in this napkin for a little bit and get some of that grease off of the napkin. And I'm going to put that back there. Kind of let some of that grease that's in the sausage and in the bacon come off. And then let me even take this towel out. You can kind of see all that grease that this towel is trapping. And so you really don't want that to end up in your food. So you do need to trap some of that grease. And then now I'm going to pour the sausage and bacon into the soup. And now I want to add some of the green onion. I'm going to check a potato real quick here, kind of see how they're cooking. They're still a little bit firm, so this is still going to have to cook for a little while. I have this on a kind of a high medium heat. I'm going to turn it down real quick and kind of let it simmer on a on kind of a low area as I cut up the green onion. So I'm going to cut up the green onion. I'm going to cut it up kind of small to kind of make sure that the green onion kind of mixes in throughout the dish and a person isn't getting like a big chunk of it along with the kale. So it's good to have, I think it's good to cut it kind of small, a couple of millimeters. I say that like in America, I guess we'd say a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch. But to me, the metric system works here. So 1 millimeter, that's about how big it is. So either way. So cut those up and then put them in the soup as well. And then as the soup is continuing to cook, I want it to kind of, all these flavors to marry in pretty well. I'm smelling it. Okay. It smells pretty good. What do you think? Okay, I'm gonna taste this piece of kale that's on this board. Okay. The crushed red pepper will actually continue to mix in with the seasoning and become a little bit more, make it a little bit more spicy, but I'm not gonna wait that long. So I'm gonna add a little bit of paprika to bring out some of that spice of the crushed red pepper, a little bit more crushed red pepper. I'm also going to add a little dash of cayenne to bring out some of the heat. I like the heat in the food. And I'm going to taste it again. Kind of stir that up, mix that in. You do want to be careful about adding too much paprika, because it will cause this kind of reddish or pinkish color to occur. So you do need to be careful, because that can look kind of weird. But I'm going to taste it again. Okay. So that flavor is pretty good. There's a pretty good spice there. I do think it could use a little bit more salt, but because I don't want strong salt flavor, I'm going to add the iodized sea salt, because sometimes the Himalayan pink salt can taste a little bit more pungent. Okay. This has a pretty good flavor, and it's going to need just a little bit more time to simmer. Also, what I'm going to do is, I kind of like that, added the Mexican sour cream, the salvadoreña, but I'm also going to add a little bit of milk to give a little bit more of that creamy flavoring. Okay, and then I'm going to let this simmer for a little bit. I'm going to kind of clean up the kitchen as this simmers. So you kind of clean up as you go. There's already a good flavor. But also what I'm going to do in a little bit, as this soup starts to excuse me, become more completely finished, I'm going to make some garlic bread. So I'm going to keep out the Italian seasoning, the garlic powder, the black pepper, a little bit of the salt. I usually don't put the minced garlic or whole garlic in there, but I might try that tonight. We'll see. Okay, so I don't want to make the garlic bread just yet, because it'll cook too fast and then it'll be cold by the time the soup's ready. So I'm going to let the soup steep a little bit more and then make the garlic bread later. So I'll clean up the kitchen a little bit. Okay. And so now I'm going to make the garlic bread. And I bought these rolls at H-E-B for like $1. So that's a pretty good price. And I'm going to slice them along the piece of bread. And kind of cut them a little bit thin right there, but that's okay. And then I'm going to make a garlic butter sauce to put on them. Kind of make them kind of like a little garlic bread, garlic toast. I'm going to preheat the oven. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this minced garlic and put it in there. And I'm going to take a little bit of the sun cocoa oil and add that. The reason why I use the sun cocoa oil is because it needs to be enough, kind of liquidy enough to go across all the bread. And I don't want to use a whole bunch of butter, but because butter is delicious, I am going to use, it's a big chunk of butter, but I'll use that much. And so now I'm going to also add some garlic powder, some Italian seasoning. I'm going to put some Italian seasoning in the soup as well. I'm going to stir that in a little bit. It's looking pretty good. Those potatoes do take a while to cook. Might turn it up a little bit to about a high-medium heat. And then, as I was preparing this, I got an idea to add some onion powder to this mix. So I'm going to do that and see how it tastes. I'm sure it'll be yummy. I'm going to put some cracked black pepper in here. And some of the, and then I am going to put some cracked Himalayan sea salt in here as well. Or not sea salt. Himalayan salt is not from the sea. So Himalayan salt, the pink Himalayan salt. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get all of that in there. And I'm going to put this in the microwave, kind of let all the seasoning marry together. And let the butter kind of melt, so I can just spread it on the bread and get it into the oven. What I'll use is I'll use one of these little brushes to spread it onto the bread. It doesn't need to cook in the microwave for a long time, and so just a few seconds. It's been about 20 seconds. Typically what I find is it takes about 15 seconds for the microwave to heat up. And so if you're going to cook something for a short time period, it has to at least be like 20 seconds. That's what I find with my microwave anyway. And so I'm going to kind of mix that in. And I'm going to kind of pull it up in this little brush and spread it on these pieces of toast. And I kind of do pull up some seasoning into the brush. So each piece of toast has some seasoning. If you don't pull up the seasoning into the brush, then it's like all the seasoning's left in the bowl and the last piece of toast gets a whole lot of seasoning. And so you want to make sure you're getting some seasoning with each go around. Okay, and so I'm going to just kind of pour this on here for the last piece of bread and then mix it around and then just pop that in the oven. I know that we're eating some potatoes, and oftentimes I don't like having too many starches, but it is just nice to have a piece of bread to dip in soup and eat with soup sometimes, and it allows for a little bit more hardiness with the meal and another texture. So I'm going to put this in the oven and check on the soup, and then we'll see how it is when it's finished. Okay, this is, I turned that up, it has a good boil to it. And I added the milk a little bit early, I think, but it's okay. You don't want to add milk too early, the creamy stuff, because it can curdle in here and it can be weird. But, get a little piece of kale, see how it is. Okay. Now that's pretty good. It's still tasting good. The flavors from the peppers are coming out a little bit more. I'm going to check the potato. So the potato is still a little bit stiff. I like it pretty smushy, so we're going to let that cook a little bit more, steam a little bit more. And the bread is cooking, so hopefully everything will be done at the same time. so we can eat a nice warm dish. Okay. All right, now so the soup is completely ready. The garlic bread is ready. And then I'm gonna add some Parmesan flakes. I like the flakes. You can buy a whole Parmesan and grate it yourself, or you can buy grated pieces, but I like the flakes. And so I'm gonna add those to my soup and kind of stir those in a little bit, let that flavor marry a little bit. And what I like about cooking things at home is like you can prepare it your own way, but you can also eat it your own way. And so like if I went to a restaurant, I might get more of the soupiness, might be a little bit more soupy, but because I served it myself at home, I can serve a little bit more hearty, a little bit more of the like food, like potatoes and kale and sausage and bacon in the soup. So I'm going to try the soup and see what it tastes like. Try to get a piece of kale, and a piece of bacon, a piece of potato in here. Try to get everything kind of in there, and some juice, and try to taste it. All right, it has a very good flavor. You can taste the kale, you can taste potatoes, the sausage. So everything has its own independent flavor, but as a complete soup, the juices are really good, the flavor's really good. You can taste the garlic and the crushed red pepper. So nothing is overpowering the dish where you can't taste the variety of flavors that are present in the dish. And that's what you always want to make sure when you're cooking, that you're tasting the food that you're eating, and you're not, the flavors aren't covered up with something else, or you didn't cook the flavor out of the food. Now I'm going to taste the garlic bread by itself. It's a little bit on the buttery side, a little bit on the garlicky side, but I like that, so I'm okay with it. Now I'm going to dip the bread in the juice. I'm going to taste that. That is so good. All of that together is just so good. My family loves this dish. In total, with the sausage, the bacon, the kale, the potatoes, it's probably less than $10 for all of the ingredients. And it's a family of 5. It's going to feed us for a couple of days. That's a pretty large bowl of pot of soup. So it's less than $2 a person per meal. And so that's a really good budget, healthy meal on a budget. All right, thank you. See you next time.